Phil, here we go. We're going to talk about my 10-1 Enchantress deck. A lot of people have been asking for me to have do this again, but explain it to the layman. Here we are. We've got you here to ask the questions that people would be asking if they have not played this deck before. So let's get into it. First off, we'll talk about the avatar Enchantress.
Yeah, so I see that the special ability on this card is whenever you cast a spell, you may animate target aura until your next turn. An aura minion has power equal to its cost. So animating your auras, and I see that there are 13 auras. Now, Zac, you're going to have to explain to me what exactly the auras are doing, like how auras work at a baseline. Is this the card that sits on the cross?
Yes, so most auras sit at the intersection between four sites.
Yes.
And they affect everything within that section. Think of it as like an enchantment that like affects just an area, right? Like
it affects 4 squares, right?
Yeah, it affects 4 squares. Now, there are some enchantments, some auras that specifically say they go on one site. Like Wildfire is one of those. Wildfire goes on one specific site, but we'll talk about that more in depth in a second. But what this allows you to do is it allows you to take an aura that's already gaining you some amount of value and turn it into a creature to essentially allow you to attack with that creature or to gain some amount of value because you're using it to attack opponents' creatures or do damage to them, something like that. Or getting more value out of the aura based on some interactions that these auras have in the deck with each other is a thing as well. But basically, this avatar is like secret card advantage. Is sort of the idea, is that every one of your auras represents more than just what it does. It also represents it being a creature, which is possibly a removal spell, which is possibly also something that came into play, removed a card, or came into play and affected the board state in a way that allowed you to progress your plan. So each aura has its own use, but on top of that, it has a use as a thing that can help you close out the game.
Yeah, so let's start doing the rundown and explain to me what is. I see 13 auras in the Enchantress deck. Is that high? Is that low? Is that
that's pretty stock for the Enchantress deck. You don't want to just run all enchantments. All auras, because all auras would proc each other, but they kind of, you have some utility cards in the deck, and also they're a little expensive, so it's harder to spell an aura.
But also the Enchantress avatar needs a spell to be cast, which is just magic, right?
Yeah, anything out of your spell book is a spell. So any card that you cast out of your spell book counts as a spell. So it'll proc off of an aura, it'll proc off an artifact or a minion or magic.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So the first aura that we have up here is Silence. Silence. All minions occupying affected sites lose all non-basic abilities. Basic abilities are move, attack, and intercept. So move, attack, and block, right? So basically what this does is it turns off minions. Now, this is in the deck for a couple reasons. Do you remember the Root Spider card? The card.
Remind me what it does. I remember you saying me that it was like one of the backbone cards of the early game.
Yeah. So Root Spider costs 3, and it goes under a site. It has burrow. So it's hard to get at because another creature would have to have burrow to be able to attack it. But on top of that, it does very much like Silence. It turns off anything that is on top of it, right? Well, Silence gets rid of all non-basic abilities, and it makes it so that the Root Spider loses burrowing. You know what happens when a creature loses burrowing and it's underground, Phil?
It dies.
It dies. It suffocates to death. It literally is taken off the board. It dies.
So Zac, tell me then, what is the rationale for the decks that are playing Root Spider? Why play Root Spider instead of Silence if they both ostensibly do similar things?
Great question. Well, Root Spider is a little bit easier to cast because it only costs 1 earth to cast and 3 total mana. Silence is a little bit harder. You play Silence because it sticks on the board. Root Spider can also move around. Now, in my deck, Silence can move around too. In most decks, Silence sits there. If it's going to be played, it stays in that one spot. So Silence has the option of being able to get rid of your opponent's creatures. Also, the other thing, Root Spider, is that Root Spider stops attacks too, because it doesn't say non-basic abilities. It says they just lose all. They're disabled. They lose all text. So using Silence allows you to get rid of pesky creatures that would otherwise maybe not attack or block, but are utility, right? And then we have Black Plague. Black Plague, at the end of your turn, the weakest minion occupying affected sites dies. If tied, choose one, dispel if none die. We talked about this card in the Archimago breakdown. This and Great Famine are the opposite effects. One's weakest, one's strongest. Now, here's a funny thing, Phil. Let's say you use your Great Famine and it kills a guy, right? And it can kill a root spider, which is kind of great because it does on the site. And then the next turn, you notice that like nothing's going to die on your turn. Well, if you play a silence, you can turn on the Great Famine as a creature, and it loses all of its abilities, right? And it stays in play. So you can use silence as a way to like keep things that would be like kind of ephemeral in play for a little bit longer because they would lose their abilities.
Oh, I see. And then your Enchantress moves them around to then continue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thunderstorm is similar as well. Thunderstorm, it costs 4 mana. It needs 2 air. So you're already looking at a deck that is a little greedy on the air and fire and water threshold. So you have to be mindful of that in your mulligans and in your building of your mana base. But Thunderstorm says this can be cast anywhere on the board. So let's keep that in mind. You don't have to be anywhere. You don't have to be close to anybody to cast this. You just boom, plop it down. At the end of your turn, deal 3 damage to a random unit atop affected sites. Then you may move Thunderstorm 1 step. After it deals damage 3 times, dispel it. So again, with silence, you can turn that off.
So if you silence a Thunderstorm, let's say it's dealt damage twice, and then you silence it, and then you move the silence, and now Thunderstorm has its ability again. Will it remember that it has been used twice before?
It will remember, but as long as you can keep it a creature and near the silence, it stays a creature, doesn't have that ability, and continues to stay on the board.
And these are all heavy hitters when you silence them because your Enchantress makes them like this hits for 4, the other
this
stuff
is a 4-drop,
yeah. Yeah.
And now something that's important to note about Enchantress: these remain a creature until your next turn, so they're still a creature on your opponent's turn too.
Zach, so now we have a question about layers. If you silence your silence?
Well, that silence will be silenced, but the other one, as long as it's not a creature, will not be silenced.
Okay, so you can if silence is if you have multiple auras on an affected site, it's only the last one that has.
Well, you're only silencing a silence if it's a creature, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
All right. So Thunderstorm and Wildfire are the two like heavy hitters in this deck. They do a lot of damage. So Thunderstorm is attacking for 4 as a creature, right? And then dealing 3 damage on top of that at the end of your turn, right? Which is great if you know that your opponent's avatar is the only thing on the board. You're like, smash a site, smash one of the realm sites to deal 4 damage to my opponent. And then because my opponent's avatar is the only thing in those 4 spots, deal 3 more damage to it. So like you can get in for 7 with this if you set it up properly. Wildfire says, conjure Wildfire atop a single site nearby. So you have to have a spellcaster nearby, and we'll talk about that in a second, to be able to cast this.
So conjure is a keyword that signifies that it can only be done by a spellcaster.
Yes. Yeah. Well, any spell has to be cast by a spellcaster. Any spell. So your avatar is a spellcaster just by the nature of being an avatar, but there are other cards that say spellcaster on them that allow you to cast spells as well. So positioning will matter here because you want to get this as close to your opponent's end of the board as possible, right? Now, this is an interesting one. At the end of each turn, that's yours and your opponent's turn, each unit here takes 3 damage, then move Wildfire to an adjacent location it hasn't visited before. If none remain, dispel Wildfire. So Wildfire just keeps dipping around the board to places that it hasn't been.
So how do you track that?
Yeah, there's actually a token to track it. I use dice because sometimes there are like 2 Wildfires on the board, and you really need to be like, Wildfire 1 has been on all the spaces that are the 1 pip. Wildfire 2 has been in all the spaces with the 2 pip. It gets confusing, but it's very important to be able to track that, and there are tokens to track it. So here's the thing about this card is normally you could be in a situation where you're in a spot that you can't get out of, but the Wildfire, if it's a creature, could double back and then burn the same spot that it's already been and then move to a new spot if it was trapped before. So you can get a lot of extra use out of the Wildfire by turning it into a creature and having it like run to certain parts of the board, allowing you to like get extra movement out of it, keeping it on the board for ostensibly longer than it normally would have been if it hadn't been a creature. Also, you can silence it with silence as well, and it won't do this. Now, an important thing to note about both Thunderstorm and Wildfire. If they're creatures, they're going to hit themselves, right? Wildfire is going to deal damage to every unit at that location, which means it will deal damage to Wildfire itself. So if you're in a situation where you're going to attack one of your opponent's creatures, make sure you kill it, because make sure like you're going to get the damage with the Wildfire as well, because Wildfire is going to kill itself if it takes any damage during turn, because it's going to deal 3 damage. Any one more damage is going to end it, right?
And remind me, damage wears off at the end of turn, right?
It does, yes. Now, with Thunderstorm, similar thing. Now, here's an important thing to remember. If you're attacking your opponent's avatar, all avatars have at least a 1 power, so it's going to deal its damage back. So if you get a chance to, deal your damage to the realm and not the avatar, if you can, right? Because that 1 damage is going to kill the Thunderstorm. Same thing also with the Thunderstorm is it's going to look around and be like, there's my opponent's avatar and the Thunderstorm. So you have a 50-50 chance of hitting yourself with the Thunderstorm as well, or hitting the Thunderstorm with itself as well. Keep that in mind, because it does see itself as a creature or a unit. It has to count itself. All right. The next aura in this deck is Abundance. Abundance says each affected site provides 1 additional mana. It costs 5. It has 2 water threshold. This is one of the cards for me, Phil, that is you look at it and you think this is kind of a Timmy casual kind of card. They're getting double threshold on stuff. But if you put this at the nexus of your 4 spots, you've just doubled your mana production. And in this game, where you can choose to draw from your Atlas or your spellbook, that means you no longer need to draw from your Atlas almost ever, as long as this card's in play. So you are essentially saying, I'm going to get to draw from my spellbook for the rest of the game. I'm all gas now.
Yeah, I think that's the potent thing, is that there are no more dead draws.
Yeah, you're always drawing, and that also means that you're always able to turn on your other auras, or this aura. Now, if you attack with this aura, and you're attacking one of your opponent's sites, yes, they will be gaining on their next turn. They'll be gaining that mana because you have to move on to it to attack it. So keep that in mind, but sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's worth it to give your opponent 1 or 2 extra mana to do 5 damage to them. It might end the game, you know? All right, the next one is very similar to Black Plague and Great Famine, is the Atlantean Fate. Atlantean Fate is a unique aura for 5 and 2 water threshold, and it says affected non-ordinary sites are flooded. They are water sites, and they only provide water threshold and lose all other abilities. So there are a lot of defensive sites like Gnome Hollow, stuff like that make it hard to get around. Perilous Bridge is one that makes it so you can't traverse the top of the site, so you could block your opponent off from being able to attack with it, or to being able to like get through with it. Atlantean Fate takes all of those and just makes them water sites. Then it says Genesis, which means come into play. Genesis is submerge all minions and artifacts atop affected sites.
So that pretty much is like Wrath of Godding a ton of things.
It just takes everything that's on that site and says it's underwater now. If it doesn't have submerge, it's dead.
So when it says it only provides water threshold, does that mean that the threshold that it was providing now just provides water instead?
Correct.
So if it provided
you can mana screw people.
If it provided 2 air threshold, now it just provides 2 water threshold?
Well, it would provide 1. There's nothing that provides 2 of a threshold. There's something that provides different kinds of threshold.
Okay, so let's say it was providing an earth and an air threshold. Now it's just going to provide 2 water threshold.
It only provides water.
Right, but I'm saying that like if it was
providing
providing
1 water, just 1 water, that's it.
So it only provide water threshold. Okay, so if it was providing multiple kinds of, like let's say you had a dual land in play, that was providing 2 different kinds of threshold, just loses 1. Both and now only provides water threshold?
Correct, yes.
And only a single water threshold.
That's it. Yeah. So this is a good like kind of wrath the board. This is board control. If there's one thing that every aura has kind of shown us thus far, it's board control. you're looking at what is ostensibly a mid-range control deck. You're getting extra value out of all of your like control spells, but you're also turning them into creatures. Now let's go into artifacts. Pretty simple burst of artifacts here. We've got Amethyst Core, Aquamarine Core, and Ruby Core, the 3 cores for this deck that all provide 1 threshold. These are somewhat important, but not linchpins of the deck. They basically allow us to cheaply proc the Enchantress's effect on our enchantments, but also allow us to not have to draw extra sites when we don't need sites anymore. Then there's also the Philosopher's Stone, which is this game's Black Lotus. We're a 3 element deck, so there will be a lot of times where this will gain you 2 to 3 mana a turn. Ring of Morrigan, of course, every deck pretty much plays Ring of Morrigan nowadays. This is just great in a mid-range control deck that allows you to slowly stay back in the game if you're playing against a aggressive deck. We already have those elements of being a deck that like needs to not die early on in the game to get our plan to happen. And this is just another card. I tend to not play this early on. I play it when I can start trading cards off for it because it's a card that people will often dispel early if they see it. So if you want to overload your opponent's dispels and disenchants, you can play it early. I prefer to have this in the long game because it's a card that can help close out the game for you as well. And then finally, we have 2 Angel's Eggs. Just like Wildfire procs on at the end of every turn, Angel's Egg also procs at the end of every turn, Phil. So we talked about this with Archimago because it was a card I think I showed you with Archimago. At the end of each turn, its controller the controller of Angel's Egg site gains 1 life. So a very important part of this is that you can't move your avatar with this card onto your opponent's sites or they'll start gaining life. But generally you're not doing that. You're staying back as the Enchantress and trying not to take extra damage and trying to move away from your opponent. So this card's great because, again, as a mid-range control deck, you're gaining life, you're staying in the game a little bit longer. It allows you to draw more cards over the course of the game and get you into a point where you can just take over. Minions. Let's talk about minions, Phil. This is the Adept Illusionist. I know you're going to love this card. So first off, it's a spellcaster. You're going to see a common theme with our deck. There's a lot of spellcasters. 2 water threshold for a 2 power minion for 2. And it says, tap to search your hand, cemetery, or spellbook for another Adept Illusionist, summon it nearby, shuffle if needed. So this is an elite minion, so there are only 2 in the deck, but it basically allows you to go get the other spellcaster in your deck and continually use them. So I don't know if you think about the applications that has with this deck.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like tap, everything is summoning sick, right?
Yes.
So if you tap to search it and summon it nearby is to
anything within that 9 spots.
Any in
like,
the
8 spots
square
around it. Yep.
So that means that you can just start moving your auras wherever you want to a lot faster, right?
Certainly allows you to cast your auras faster, but 2 power is kind of this is a gray ogre game. Everything's kind of in that 2 power range or able to be like 2 power is a lot of extra damage. Like a little the 2 power chunks here and there. You might be like, okay, I'm going to play my Adept Illusionist down over here. Now I can cast my, what's it called? The next turn you cast Wildfire, and you know the Wildfire is going to deal 3 damage to something that maybe has a 5 power. You'll attack your Adept Illusionist into the spot with the Wildfire to do 2 damage to your opponent's guy. Kill the Adept Illusionist dies. You resummon the Adept Illusionist to another spot because you can get it from your graveyard. The Wildfire procs and deals the other 3 damage to your opponent's guy and kills it. There's a lot of like just chipping in just a little bit of extra damage. This is also a card that's very hard to get rid of because you have to get rid of both of them. If your opponent gets rid of one of them, you're just going to get it back. So especially if you're playing against an aggressive deck, if you're able to just keep an Adept Illusionist in play and be like, oh, I'll just block a little bit of damage here and let it die, and then I'll go back and get it next turn, and now it can intercept here. It's a very annoying card for your opponent to deal with, and they have to spend an extra card to get rid of it. So if you can get this off early, you have a card that's not only dealing a little bit of extra damage everywhere that's really annoying for your opponent, but it can also just be a hyper defensive card if you're if your opponent doesn't respect it. And this is a card that doesn't see a lot of play, so a lot of people don't realize that, and they try and get rid of it once. You bring it back, and they're like, oh my god, what have I done? It's just, this is a super potent card that not a lot of people see, and I really love it. It's one of my favorite cards in the game.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Like I love something that can endure forever.
Yeah. Apprentice Wizard. This is just a staple of every air deck. Spellcaster for 3 and an air, 1 power guy that draws a card. You're just churning through your deck. We're just using Spellcaster to thin the deck out, and maybe we'll get an extra point of damage here or there with it, or maybe we'll block some damage.
Who doesn't appreciate an Elvish Visionary?
Exactly. We have 1 Fey Changeling. Fey Changeling can be summoned to any site, so you can summon it anywhere, no matter where you want to summon it. And it says Genesis, you return a minion here to its owner's hand. So it's a mana war.
We love a mana war. Bounce something back to the hand.
Now, there are flex slots in this deck. This is one of the flex slots. I threw Merlin into this flex slot. We know Merlin from the Archimago deck. He's a 3 for 3 air and 3 spellcaster, and he just gets to Future Sight. You get to look at the top of your deck and cast spells on the top of your deck.
It's an immensely powerful ability. That's one of those. Merlin, when you showed it to me in the Archimago deck, was one of the cards where I was like, oh, this thing is cracked. Like, I didn't need to know the rest of the stuff. I was just like, I understand that tacking on draw card to every spell is cracked.
Yeah. We're going to skip Cortis and Thias for a second. We're going to talk about Grandmaster Wizard, another staple of every air deck. Draw 3 cards, and a spellcaster, again, very important.
Zach, when something is drawing cards, if this says draw 3, you could like pick and choose if you're drawing from your spellbook or your atlas, right?
This says draw 3 spells.
But this one specifically spells, so not sites. So
if it says spells, you got to draw spells. If it says sites, you got to draw sites.
Got it.
If it says draw 3 cards,
you can choose.
You draw from anywhere.
Okay.
Death Dealer. This classic is Genesis kill all other minions, so more of that mid-range control, and you get to keep your Death Dealer. Death Dealer stays in play.
Yeah, Death Dealer, I imagine, is like any deck that's even remotely interested in a longer game. It's going to have the one of Death Dealer, right?
Yeah. Now, a card you haven't really seen yet that I think is worth kind of pointing out and seeing what your response is to it is Cortis and Thias. Cortis and Thias has Genesis. During their next turn, each player is controlled by the previous one.
During their next turn, each player is controlled by the previous one. Okay, so this is a Mindslaver.
Mm-hmm. So on your turn, I get to be you. On my turn, you get to be me.
I see. So it double backs. Okay, but like you get to take you get to Mindslave them first.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's where the power lies in this card. You just get to like ransack their entire. You get to like annihilate their board before they can annihilate yours. So like you just take all of the advantage that they could. Essentially, like you taking over their turn is a lot more powerful than them taking over yours because you get first dibs.
Yeah, well, that is the hope. But there's also one thing that I think a lot of people, when they first evaluate this card, don't realize. Phil, you know about Death's Door, right? So Death's Door is the one thing that makes like the OTK in this game like not happen. It gives your opponent a chance to like kind of fight back, get back into the game. If you have the ability to put your opponent to Death's Door, and then you play Cortis and Thias, there's a very good chance that you can just attack your opponent's avatar into one of your creatures next turn, and they'll lose the game.
Now, this begs the question. I know in something like Magic, you can't, if you control a creature, you can't attack yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do that in Sorcery?
I'm pretty sure you're not able to attack your own creatures, but if your opponent has, like, let's say, I've got Wildfire in play or whatever, right? And I put my opponent to Death's Door, and then I played Cortis and Thias. I had to move the Wildfire over one spot, and now it's my opponent's turn. I can have my opponent attack into the Wildfire that's still a creature, and they die.
You own that thing. You can obviously like throw your opponent's stuff into stuff you own. Yeah. I'm curious, like, you can't have like if your opponent wasn't at Death's Door and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna have you attack your own sites. You can't do that, right?
Another thing you can do, just like with Mindslaver, is be like, I'll lightning bolt myself.
Right, totally. But I'm specifically asking, can something declare an attack on its controller's own site?
I believe no.
Because that's huge. If that's a big game changer.
I may be wrong. Someone in the comments, let me know for sure.
The fact that you're 10-1 with this, and that's not something that has come up at all.
It's because I've been dominating the that side of the board, so it's never happened to me yet.
Yeah, but that is something that I could see coming up in a bigger thing. Like if you're like, oh man, if I can just have this, like, you know, they play Death Dealer, you play Cortis and Thias. It's like, okay, I'm gonna have Death Dealer attack their own site and dome them. You know, like that seems.
So they can't attack their own site. You have to deal damage. So Death Door only happens when you deal damage directly to the avatar.
Right, but like let's say they're still at like 12 or whatever.
Oh yeah. I don't think they can attack their own site. No.
Okay.
All right. So now on to magic. So you need these cards to proc your Enchantress effect, but also these are some pretty useful cards that keep the whole like mid-range control part of this deck flowing. So one of the first ones is Blink.
Yeah, moving an ally that you control away from where you just put an aura seems pretty good.
Yeah, well, also, Phil, one of the cool things about Blink and the timing in this game versus the timing in like Magic the Gathering, let's say, is that the way the Enchantress works is when you put a spell onto the stack, as it were, when you announce a spell is being cast, that is when you can choose to make one of your auras into a creature. So I can technically take an aura like Wildfire and be like, oh man, it's going to go away next turn if I don't move it. I can cast Blink, make it a creature, and use the Blink to move the Wildfire.
So this thing doesn't
works in Magic.
Yeah, this thing doesn't. In Magic, you'd have to declare a target. So this one, you don't actually have to declare a target until it resolves.
Yeah. So there's that. And also is a cantrip. It draws a card. Love that. I play one disenchant in this, and this is destroy all our auras and artifacts at target location up to 2 steps away. This is just a great utility spell. I'm not playing Earth, so I don't have access to a Common Sense here, which is funny. That's the podcast name, right? Which is, hey, this is a great time, by the way. We just invoked Common Sense. Like, subscribe to the video. If you're not a supporter of the channel yet, this is a great time to go ahead and support the channel by clicking the subscribe button. To that end, because I don't play Common Sense, I have to play a lot of cantrips and stuff, and this is just kind of a miser's disenchant that you'll occasionally hit something that's relevant to get going in the game. One of the things also that's important to know about the Enchantress is I don't have to choose my enchantments. I can choose my opponent's enchantments, turn them into creatures, and get rid of them that way. So there's situations where I'm like, I don't want that enchantment to be on the board anymore. I'm going to cast Fey Changeling, make their aura into a creature, bounce it back to their hand, or maybe I'll lightning bolt it or firebolt it. You know, I'm able to get rid of my opponent's enchantments just based off the fact that I have the Enchantress. So next up is one of Firebolts, and we also have a one of Magic Missiles in here. I don't have a Magic Missile. So one of Firebolts. We saw this in the Archimago deck. It's shoot 3 projectiles. They each deal 1 damage in the same direction. Then we have, and these are kind of all spells. The Firebolts, the Lightning Bolt are all spells that I use to like kind of just close out the game. When I've gotten to the point where my opponent's at death's door, I can just be like, I'm going to target you with this one thing, and it's over. Because you're so good at controlling the board, your opponent generally doesn't have a lot on the board to, like, one way you can stop the Lightning Bolt from winning the game is by having your opponent stack a bunch of guys up there and being like, it's 1 unit random at this location, so good luck, you know? So that is a way to do it. But because the deck has so much control, you're able to get rid of most of the creatures on the board. So more direct damage with Lightning Bolt. Then we have Riptide, which is more movement. A target water site pulls an above ground minion it's adjacent to, draw a card. So this is like a movement spell, but it can also pull an opponent to a space that they don't want their guy to be, which is really cool. We have Feast for Crows. We're going to do a video about what to call for Feast of Crows for every deck. This is sort of the what's the word I'm looking for? The Cabal therapy of this game. You name a spell, search your opponent's hand, spell book, and cemetery for cards of that name, and banish them, which is exiling them.
This is the surgical extraction, the Jester's Cap.
Exactly. Yeah. This is the card that, like, depending on what deck you're playing against, you use this to get rid of their most devastating cards in the deck. Next up, we have Infiltrate.
Let me just say that Feast of Crows, for anybody that's like, if you're new to the game like me, you understand that while the game is still young and the card pool is only so big, that Feast of Crows power is still pretty vast.
Yeah.
Like as more cards come out, and like the more cards are played, and the diversity of spells and everything in decks are higher variety, this loses some of that power, even though you know that there's still going to be the unique haymakers that is likely going to be able to catch. But that'll be an interesting episode. I'm curious.
As metagames coalesce, you'll see that it becomes more and more easy to determine like what the best cards are. I'm not going to spoil my thoughts on what to name for each deck right now. We'll do that in a separate episode.
As somebody who loves to win games, not by actually beating the opponent, but by just stripping their capacity to win, I love this kind of card.
Yeah. And as you can see, this deck is also very resilient to a Feast for Crows. Like, what would you off the top of your head name against a deck that can turn all of its signature cards into creatures, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. You're gonna teach me.
I don't know either. I don't know that I might just say Grandmaster Wizard because I wouldn't want my opponent drawing extra cards. But I think that this is one of the decks that's more resilient against a Feast for Crows. Anyhow, next on to Infiltrate. Infiltrate is a magic that says gain control of target minion until it deals damage and tap it gains stealth. So stealth is interesting because stealth means it can't be targeted or attacked. It also means that it can't be blocked. So if you steal one of your opponent's guys and then attack your opponent with it, that could be death's door for you. It also just gets a pain in the butt minion off the board. Like you can just take your opponent's guy and just be like, I'm not letting you play with that anymore.
So yeah, once you stealth it, gaining stealth, it loses stealth once it attacks or blocks, right? And that's it. Like that's the only way to remove stealth.
Correct. Well, or if it casts a spell, anytime it affects the board.
Yeah, but like you could just be like, okay, this thing is never gonna, like you can just use this as a 4-mana removal spell for a thing. Like
exactly.
That's you're like, oh, I need to get rid of the Adept Illusionist. Like I'm actually, instead of I'm gonna infiltrate your Adept Illusionist, and now I can't tap to get it back.
Exactly. Or there's several other situations like that, but that's a perfect example. It's like the Adept Illusionist is on the board. The other Adept Illusionist is just a 2/2 at that point, right? All right. Speaking of Adept Illusionist combos, we have Pact with the Devil. Phil, this is a card I know you're going to love. 4 mana and 2 red threshold. Sacrifice the caster or lose half your life, round it up. If you do, draw 3 cards.
You know I'm ready for an Ancestral, bro. I don't care how much it costs.
4 mana for an Ancestral, but also, if you sacrifice one of your, let's say you sacrifice your Apprentice Wizard. If you sacrifice your Apprentice Adept Illusionist, you can just get it back.
Yeah, we love value. We love a good value.
There's a non-zero number of times that I use this. I just paid half my life.
A nice thick village rights,
far.
yeah. Well, yeah. If you got a bunch of Angel's Eggs, you're like, how bad can this really be?
Yeah. Ball Lightning, not the same as Ball Lightning from Magic the Gathering. Shoot a projectile. It deals 4 damage on impact, then changes direction. Its next impact deals 2, then it changes direction, and its next impact deals 1. So you can do 1, move it to the side, or move it backwards.
Yeah, it moves on. Remind me if it can move on a cross. That's what's
so projectile is just a straight line.
Yeah, but it's a straight line and it can move essentially like a rook can move.
Correct. Yeah. So one of the ways that this can essentially deal 5 damage to an opponent if you just wanted to. If you were like at like line of sight with an opponent, and it'd go 4 damage. I take 2. You take the other 1, right? Like you could just get in the rest of the damage that you want for like to end the game that way, right? Or you could use it to like clear up the board and be like, I'm going to hit this thing, that thing, and then this. You know, there's a lot that this does, and it's very versatile, and it's just a card that like can solve a lot of problems. 5 damage is a lot of damage to hit a creature with. 4 is like the secret sweet number though, because cards like Dapperal Vampire or Death Dealer are at 4. There's a lot of cards that are at 5 as well though, that it's like worth it to take the 2 damage to get rid of this.
Another thing, you let your use your Adept Illusionist to cast the thing, hit for 4, bounce back, hit the Adept Illusionist, it'll die, deal the other one back to the thing, and then
bring it back.
Rebuy the Adept Illusionist.
Yep. All right, we've got Poison Nova, which we saw in the last episode with the Archimago. This is a 5 mana, 1 red threshold, which is it's just criminally undercosted on threshold. Lethal, deal 1 damage to each other nearby minion. With all the spellcasters in our deck, that means that we can run around the board and really get our opponent with this card. We just have to be careful that we don't turn on our auras when we do this. It is a May effect, the Enchantress ability. So make sure you don't turn on your aura when you do this and kill your aura.
Yeah, so that's like it wraths a region. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally, Major Explosion. Target location 2 steps away. It does 7 in the middle, 3 on the corners, and 5 orthogonally off of this 3x3 square. Deal damage to each unit in locations of that effect. So this is a great way to end the game if you want to hit your opponent on a specific square that they've kind of been running away from you. Again, you can cast this with your spellcasters, so you're able to get around the board and get to that 2 locations away. Also, you can just like hit a spot on the board with this where there's a bunch of guys and get rid of them. 5 damage is a lot, 7 damage is a ton, and 3 damage is nothing to scoff at. All right, so that's the spell book. Finally, we'll go to. I'm going to real quick run down the sites in the deck, and we're going to start with just the mana fixing. So we've got Color Out of Space, we've got Ruins, we've got Lighthouse, Joyous Guard, and what else? Oasis, right? Where's the Oasis? These are all mana fixers. The Joyous Guard is the 3 mana one that has to be put on the back, and the Color Out of Space is the one that has to be near a void to work. So you generally want to play those on the back row if you want them to work. All of these mana fixers are just here to make it so that it's easy for you to get your spells out. Now,
what is the void, Zach?
The void is anywhere that is not either rubble or a site already placed down. The void is anywhere that is not an established location that has a site on it yet.
So theoretically, the Color Out of Space could be turned off.
Yes, you can turn off the Color Out of Space, so you do need to be careful about that. Then we have our defensive locations. We also have Annual Fair, which can net you threshold 4 mana as well. So there's little mana fixing there at the cost of some mana. Then we also have Dark Tower, which will ramp us a little bit for a turn. Dark Tower, Lone Tower, and Gothic Tower will ramp us as long as another one hasn't been played yet. Then we have our defensive locations. So Bog will immobilize a target for a turn, which stops it from being able to move, which is great. We have the Fields of Camlin for 3 red Genesis. When this comes into play, if you have three fire Genesis already, 3 fire already, each player chooses one of their minions and kill all the rest. So it's another board control situation. Funeral Pyre, which will banish up to 3 cards from 1 cemetery. There are a lot of decks that deal with the cemetery. It's nice to be able to get rid, just to have interaction against the cemetery. So I play 3 Funeral Pyres, the most you can play. We have Merlin's Tower, which if you have 3 air threshold, this gains spellcaster, and the next magic spell costs 3 less. So it's a little bit of, it's like ramp as well. And because you have that mana fixing, you're able to use this to make that work.
I mean, costing 3 less, that's just I get that you need to have 3 air threshold already, but like that is just Black Lotus.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's a later game Black Lotus, but it's just Black Lotus.
A card that comes up pretty often for me that's very useful is Remote Desert. This is a basic site. Its Genesis is deal 1 damage to each minion atop of nearby target site. So early game, you throw this down against an opponent who's got a bunch of foot soldiers out or a tawny or whatever. It just sets them back just long enough for you to get into the game. Also, if you have like a lightning bolt, you can play a Remote Desert, deal 1 damage to a Lugbog Cat, which has a 4, and get in that extra point. So this is a card I like to play as a one-of, just because sometimes you just need that 1 extra point to like trade off with something, and that's what it's there for.
Zach, now remind me, I see the Color Out of Space. It gives you 4 different colors of 4 different thresholds.
Mm-hmm.
There are only 4 thresholds in the game, right?
Correct, yes. That is all the thresholds. River of Flame counts as a fire spellcaster, so it can cast fire spells, which is great if you have a Poison Nova. You're like, Poison Nova can be cast from this right here. Then we have Troll Bridge. Troll Bridge is an interesting one, and it can be used in conjunction with the Riptide. Remember, Riptide can pull things toward a water site.
Now,
if Bridge...
Riptide pulling towards a site does not mean like Riptide pulls it towards a site, but it's just pulling it atop that site, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's only pulling it towards the site. But a card like Troll Bridge, which you'll notice it has a 3 power attached to it. So the first time a lone enemy enters here, strike it unless they discard a card. So you can either make your opponent discard a card and save their minion, or hit their minion for 3. A lot of times that's enough to kill a minion. So you put your opponent in a situation where you're casting Riptide, drawing a card, possibly getting rid of one of their creatures, or making them discard a card. So Troll Bridge is a nice little utility. It can also just be used as a situation where, like, you could play that on the front of your battle line, and it makes it so that your opponent has to just deal with that every time they enter a site alone.
And so Troll Bridge, even though it has power, it's not like Troll Bridge can attack.
It can't attack. No, it's just defending.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the whole deck. So hopefully that was useful. I know that it's not super apparent by this like how this deck wins and how it dominates, but it's all about value. It's all about card advantage, playing that mid-range control game where you're like, everything you do nets like an extra card, and that just piles up. And then of course, not having to draw a bunch of extra sites because you are relatively low to the ground. You have 1 7-drop in the deck. Sorry, you have 3 7-drops in the deck, but for the most part, you're very low to the ground, and you don't really need much more than 4 or 5 mana to really get going.
Yeah, this is a good walkthrough. This is like the type of deck where I'm like, I understand everything that you said, but now I really need to see it in action to like understand how all these interlocking pieces actually operate together. Because like in a vacuum, I understand everything that this did, but now I really need to like see what are the things in conjunction that you need to look out for, because there's a lot of positional play.
Yeah. I had mentioned before that there were 2 maybe there were 2 flex slots. So Merlin's a flex slot. And then for me, River of Flame is like another flex slot. You can throw like another utility spell and utility site in that spot. Like for a while, I was playing Pillars of Xeros, which is gets rid of all of the creatures in the opponents in both yards and gain you life. But it was a Earth Threshold card. I don't play Earth, so I figured River of Flame was just like a slightly better choice. But with that said, let me know in the comments what deck you'd like to see me go over next. We'll do another in-depth where I explain to Phil like how this deck works. You can see this playlist here, which shows you all the other decks that we've done already. And if you have it in mind, we are part of the Eternal Durdles umbrella. If you want to support us on Patreon, you can go to our Patreon link that will be below at patreon.com/eternaldurdles, and you can get this content ad-free. We'll be doing 1 to 2 episodes of sorcery content a week, and it's a great place to get it ad-free as well. Thanks for watching, everybody.